good morning, and welcome to our conversation. Perhaps you've been participating it from afar. I'm Michael E. Gerber, the Wandering Jew, and this is Rabbi Levi Cunin, the practicing Jew, the observant Jew, the other Jew. But what we decided, and he described for me, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before that, I lose my track of time in this lockdown, is that we're brothers and sisters, we Jews, going back to the very beginning of Jews and the very beginning of the world of Jews. And it struck me so hard that no one had ever told me that before. Now, you understand, somebody might have told me that before and I didn't hear it. But it struck me so deeply, and it's already beginning to fade. So is the way of those things that strike us and then begin to fade. And today, here we are having a conversation. Rabbi Cunin, welcome to our conversation.
Welcome, Rabbi Paul. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. And as always, our minds and our hearts and our prayers are with those who are suffering during these difficult times, which are many, on many levels. Obviously, at first, those people who are actually have been hit with the virus, and the people who are suffering in other ways. And I hope that our conversation could take away from that thought pattern and put us into a different conversation, a different narrative in our minds. So it's good to be with you and good to be here to talk with each other this morning. And good to see that you're looking good and healthy.
Thank you. We'll not talk about that. Let's talk about the subject at hand. So the subject at hand, and you brought it up the other day, whichever day that was, that we're brothers. We're the same family, the family of Yiddishkeit, the family of Jews. And it struck me that while I'm a wandering Jew, I still don't run from the word Jew, because it's never been doubted by me that I am a Jew, nor has it ever been put aside as I communicate with the world. I don't stress it, but I don't hide from it. And indeed, from time to time, I do discuss it, but I don't practice it. So I'd love to get your thoughts about that. How does that happen? How does that happen with so many Jews here in California, Jews anywhere and everywhere they happen to be? That one, such as you, is a practicing Jew, such as your brothers, all of whom are practicing Jews. Your father, who's the epitome of a practicing Jew, who was sent to California, to Los Angeles specifically by the Rabbi, as if not the first to open a Chabad house, at least one of the first to do that. Talk to me about that.
So first I'll give you my short response, but then I want to share with you something. The fact is that whoever we are today, any one of us, it's really about the narrative that we have going in on our minds. And that narrative gets placed in our minds from the very, very young age. In fact, when we talk about the spiritual end of things, the younger the age that narrative begins, the more embedded that narrative is in the mind. Just to give an example, I don't believe any human being is inherently a racist. But if a child is going to grow up in a racist home, the likelihood is that that child is going to be a racist, at least at first. because that's the narrative that's running the child's life. But it's true about us all. In fact, that's something that the Baal Shem Tov shares with us, and I've shared with you many times, and I continue to share, that wherever our mind is, that's where we are. So first of all, understand that for whatever reason, some time ago in the last several generations, be it one's parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, not too far back, by the way, any person who's Jewish today, as we discussed in the past, is most likely someone who most of their ancestors were practicing Jews. But at some point, it became difficult. It became so difficult with the suffering that was going on in Europe and the deep desire of the Jews to just be left alone. And a mixture of a whole bunch of different factors, which is a longer conversation, swayed a great deal of the Jewish people away from the narrative of Torah and Judaism and into other narratives. Now, we're not judging anybody, because the reality is we can't even imagine what it was to go through a pogrom where the anti-Semites were given permission from the government to ransack neighborhoods, Jewish neighborhoods, rape the women, steal the money, kill the men. So it's understandable why someone would want to find a way to just live at peace, but it's just the fact that happens is that we are all born into the narrative that we're born into. So therefore, their narrative is what hijacks who we are. But when you, Machol, say, I'm a Jew, I never identified myself as anything else but a Jew, that really, when we learn the more mystical, that really is a representation of something that's higher than your narrative. It's connected so deeply within you that it's irrelevant about what your narrative is, which is why it's astonishing how many Jews who otherwise don't have much to do with their Yiddishkeit show up in synagogue on Yom Kippur. I assure you it's not guilt, although people may say it is. It's something that's higher than their narrative that's ticking within them on this unique and powerful day that is inviting them to experience something that's higher than their narrative. So understand, number one, that it's not that Levi Cunin has anything else other than to start off with a different narrative than Rabbi Gerber. Having said that, that which you speak about, going into the spirit of it and then coming out of the spirit of it, going into the spirit of it and then going out of the spirit of it, feeling it deeply and then not feeling it at all, is actually the Kabbalistic understanding of the universe, that the entire universe pulsates. We breathe in, we breathe out. Our heart is pumping. And so everything about us, we go into expansive consciousness and we get reduced to the most restricted consciousness. We go into inspiration and then we're in desperation. So it's the process that we're on. And the calling to us is that once we get aware of this conversation, is to look for the tools that keep us in the higher light all the time. One of them is the commitment to take another action that brings us closer to Hashem. One action, one mitzvah a day for any person, that builds the possibility of the endurance of those moments of inspiration. And in terms of, there's a story I wanted to share with you yesterday. Over the years, the Rabbi, who's beautifully hanging on the wall right behind you, and the Rabbi over the years taught 10 different songs to the Hasidim, tunes. And one of them was a tune that he was put together with words from a part of the Torah called Song of Songs. It's a love story between a man and a woman. It's a metaphor between the collective soul of the children of Israel and their relationship with Hashem. And the Rebbe taught the tune, and when he taught the tune, he said, where does this tune come from? It comes from the following story. There was once a very wealthy Jew who lived in a particular neighborhood. There was a count. In those days, the count had a tremendous amount of power. And one day this count finds out that the Jew is doing really well with his money. And he says to the Jew, I know that you like to help Jews that you don't know. I want you to know that I have one in my dungeon. And this is the amount he owes me. It's an exorbitant amount. And until he pays, he's going to sit there on his own with his family or whatever it was. Maybe it was on his own. It was on his own. So he tells him how much it is. He tells the Jew. And no one else in the city could afford to help this guy because they were all poor, but this guy was very wealthy. And the Jew emptied out all the money that he had and he gave it to the count to free his fellow Jew who he did not know from prison. And the count had his servants deliver the Jew from his dungeon in a body bag to the Jew that gave him the money. And right away the Jew went and he buried his fellow Jew. Now he lost all of his wealth, thinking that he was freeing somebody to save their life, only to find out, but still he was okay with it. He was okay with it. He did a mitzvah for a fellow Jew who could never even know that he did it so. And that night, the Rebbe continued to tell the story. This fellow had a dream. And in the dream, it was shared with him what's going on in the heavenly spheres, what kind of powerful light was produced by the behavior that he just demonstrated, selfless, godly, divine. And some angel came to him in the dream and said, you have now a choice. Either you'll be blessed with a tremendous more amount of wealth than you've ever had before, or you'll get to experience a moment of Eden as you're on physical earth, what it feels like to be in Eden, in the Garden of Eden. So in the dream, he responded, money, I already know what the pleasure is. I had a lot of it. But to think of experiencing the Garden of Eden on earth, I'm into that. And the Rebbe basically finished and said, in those moments when he had that, it occurred to him on Yom Kippur in the Eve, and it stayed with him for many, many hours. He composed this tune, and that was a tune that the Rebbe taught, which was an older tune. I share that with you because it's part of our history to identify with something about us that is higher than our narratives. Not knowing another person and to do something so selfless can only happen because there's a different narrative happening within us that's higher than our narrative. And we all have it, we all get touched by it. If only we could be blessed to be more in touch with it and to embrace it, each one of us at our own levels. I think I spoke too long.
No, I think you spoke just perfectly. So thank you for that. Is our time running out?
We have a little bit more time because we got started late.
Okay. So that's higher than our narrative, which explains or provides the answer to my question. When I say how miraculous it is that I'm still here, not hiding from my Judaism or hiding it from the world, but at the same time not practicing it. What essentially you've explained is that my not practicing it is simply the extension of my narrative, but that my not hiding it is an extension of the higher that infuses my soul with that great presence when it's called. And it's called by stories you tell. It's called by stories I've not heard. It's called by what you call the higher, what I call the miracle. In some way, I'm connected all the way back to all those Jews before me, to the very beginning of our people. In this conversation, is a hope, is a wish. This conversation between you and I. That connection will be made more real for me, for you, for every Jew who visits us, however reluctantly they may be, however indeed abrasive the idea of this conversation might be. And in some way, that spirit that Jewish spirit which lives in me, which lives in you, will touch every one of you who are watching us now in a way that it touches me. So Rabbi Levi Cunin, thank you for joining me in this meeting. You always inspire me. Even sometimes you inspire me to become more wandering. You're a dear soul.
Thank you, Rav Michal. I feel the same way about you and yours in the way you inspire me. And I feel blessed and grateful that Hashem has brought us together. And God willing, it will be something that could bring light to many others. As the Rabbi would always say, when two of us get together, it has to always benefit a third.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good day.